And you don't have to have all the world existing there at all times.
Right.
That might be an unrealistic amount of computing power.
Right.
You just need
enough of the world that they see around them.
That they see around them.
Right.
So you want to start digging, and
that's so funny.
And haven't put the Earth there. There's a flag that goes up in the programmer, and they say, need more Earth. So they put Earth beneath you while you can keep digging.
It's like the Truman Show.
Yeah, well, for example. Okay.
Cool.
Or does Minecraft, you can build
or
stuff?
Minecraft.
Right.
Oh, that is Minecraft.
Right. Okay.
God, that guy's a brilliant genius. Okay.
So, we now disrupt your regularly scheduled programming.
Greetings, fellow wanderers. Welcome to episode 10 of Wander Beyond. As you know, we're Fred and Jay, and we're your hosts for this episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. It's going to be another fun episode. Yeah, Jay, I picked that one because I know how much of a fan you are of Bill.
Huge fan of Neil's.
Yeah.
Tyson, whatever. Yeah.
So yeah, that popped up when I was doing a search for that. There's a lot going on. I guess we could just jump right into it. Jay, you said that you have some interesting things to talk about today.
I do. So, we were talking before kind of about the subject of like what, and I know we've talked about it in past episodes, and we talked about, flat Earth compared to globe, and is this a realm or what is this? But just like, are we living in maybe like a simulation or a matrix, or what exactly is this?
The whole simulation.
So there's some really interesting things. So yeah, I just want to talk about that for a while.
All right. Well, what you got for us?
Well, the first thing I'm going to show is, I'm sure we've all seen the movie The Matrix. I kind of feel like that's when like a lot of awareness started kind of come into the subject.
Yeah.
It
might be the best sci-fi movie of all time.
I love it. I could watch it. It's one of those things I could watch 1,000 times, and then when it's on for the 1,00001st time, I'm going to watch the whole movie again.
Yeah.
Like it never.
I haven't seen it in a while.
It's a great series. So let me just share my screen. But this is just sort of touches on it. So this little bit right here from The Matrix.
The Matrix is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now, in this very room. You can see it when you look out your window or when you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth.
So that's always been one of my favorite little segments.
Yep.
But so I don't know what your thoughts on that are about. Is it a possibility? Is it something to think about?
Well, explain what you think exactly he's saying there. I mean, I know what he's saying, but elaborate on it a little bit.
Well, I sort of think he's saying, and what I kind of have always thought is we're living in some sort of a matrix. And, when we go back to our episode about the 7 Hermetic principles, principle 1 is like the all is mental, right?
Right.
So sort of our thoughts create our own reality. Right. And it sort of bends to our will or our thought.
Which ties in also with the whole probability tunnel that we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Like it all ties together.
Create your own matrix that everything that you've collectively seen and experienced over your life creates what your view of the world is.
Right.
And you have to try to understand that everyone around you isn't seeing the world in the same way that you are.
That's very true. But, and then also like your thoughts create reality, but we're all like on the same server, if that makes sense. Sort of like Minecraft, like he was saying, So it's all sort of like this interconnected web. And so that's kind of what I always thought it was. And then when you start looking at things like, vortex math, or you look at what's the golden ratio, the Fibonacci sequence, things like that, where you can apply it to almost everything. To me, I mean, it almost has to be a
Right.
matrix, you know?
Yeah. I'm open to it. The only thing I always have a problem with is the why. Like, I'm really into horror movies, but
Mhm.
90% of horror movies give you all the horror, but don't explain why the horror exists.
Oh,
You
yeah.
know, if
Yeah.
I say Candyman in the mirror 3 times and he shows up, that's scary as hell. But why? Why do I have to say it in the mirror? Why do I have to say it 3 times? Why not 2 times into a microwave oven? Like, what? I don't understand what the connection is. So the simulation theory thing is that's the only part that gets me, is that I don't understand what the purpose is. We're right back to square one.
Right. However, if you look at, okay, if this is not a simulation, I think that, you know, since the beginning of mankind, our question has been, what is this and why are we here?
Yeah.
So not seeing it as a simulation still begs the same question. You know, what's the purpose?
Unanswerable question. It really
Right.
is.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I want you to talk about it a little more, but whether it's a simulation, whether it's not a simulation, whether the globe's round or flat or whatever, I still have to deal with my life. I still have the same problems. I still have to pay the same bills.
Mhm.
And whether it's a simulation or not, it's sort of like, what does it matter? You know?
Right. Let's say you knew that it was a simulation. Would you live your life any different if you knew that at the end of it?
Yeah,
You
that's
know.
a good question.
Yeah.
I guess you'd have to think about if it were a simulation and you get to the end of your life, then what? That almost seems more stark and depressing than it would be if it's not a simulation.
And then if it's not, what
if you're
happens?
just
at the
a
end of it?
code that just finally reaches 0 and there's no code anymore.
Right.
There's just nothing. I don't know.
Or do you just wake up in like another bed and you're like, whoa, that was a cool ride. You know, let's do that. This time I'm going to be a blonde from Switzerland, and, you know, I don't know, anything.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe that's what dreams are, or something. You're running a little bit of different code or something. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, is like, we still don't know what dreams are.
Right.
What's happening, you know?
So that could be the whole reincarnation thing too.
Yeah. Which we're going to get into in one of these episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you end your program and you move on to the next program. I don't know.
Right. I mean, yeah.
So what else you got? You have any thoughts? Anything else on the simulation?
Well, I mean, I've always felt like this. It almost has to be. There's just too many things that are strangely coincidental, which I'm going to dive into. You know, I know I've seen Elon Musk talk about it, and I think I'm paraphrasing, but I think he said the chances of us being in a base reality are 1 in billions.
Sure.
You know,
Actually, when I was doing some research for this, I saw the quote from him saying that there's about a 50% chance that we are in a simulation.
Hmm.
And, you know, that might be hyperbole, you know, like,
there's a
yeah.
lot of people out there that think that he's might not be human also, which
I've seen that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen that.
He's oddly awkward. Like, I don't even know if awkward's the right word. I mean, obviously he's uber intelligent, but
He is. I also think he's on the autism spectrum too.
I do too. But he's like oddly non-human, and in some way I can't describe.
Yeah. No, I understand.
Yeah.
And when you look into his parents and stuff, there's a lot of strangeness there for sure.
Oh, really? I'd never.
Oh yeah, his mom is totally like way out there. I don't want to say satanic, but there's some very strange things. I'd have to look up her. I don't even remember her name. It's a very, very strange name as well. But she has a lot of strange, like, satanic symbolism and stuff she releases videos and stuff. I think she used to be a model or something too.
Wow.
So there's a lot of videos of her in like very, strange outfits. I don't mean like strange, like Paris fashion, like, wow, I would never wear that kind of strange. I mean, like, like devil horns, red latex kind of stuff. I don't know, just weird things.
And that's something I'd like to get into in another episode also, is how is it that like the people that are at the top of the chain, the food chain in this world, all seem to have these ties like that.
Yeah.
What's up with that?
Yeah. I guess, did you see any of the clips from Saturday Night Live last night?
No.
Lady Gaga was on there.
I vaguely heard about this, but I don't know
I didn't watch them. I just saw, as I was scrolling through the internet, screenshots of it. So I don't even know what the skit was or whatever, but it's like her and other cast members all dressed with the satanic horns and the latex, and like the pictures, there's like blood running out of their mouths, and like she's got one of the cast members like by a chain and a leash around their neck. And so I don't know. I didn't watch it, but they don't even hide it anymore.
Yeah.
It's just right out there in the open.
And she has a lot of previous ties to that stuff already.
Oh yeah, lots.
So I believe, I want to say she was born and raised in like a Masonic temple or something also. Or it was either that or some kind of like satanic cult place. I'd have to look into it again, but it was something like that.
I know we have episodes planned. This one, the next one. Let's make that third one from now that. So
that's something to dive into. And like the whole Epstein thing, that's a whole nother rabbit hole that just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper.
Yeah. There's some strangeness out there. Of course, there's that where where's the Epstein files, all that stuff. But oh no, what's it called? That video has resurfaced again. The one with Hillary and Huma.
Frazzle Drip.
Thank you. That video is reemerged again.
Have you ever seen it?
That's starting. I have to admit, I have not seen it. I have seen clips of it. But it's out there, and maybe before that episode, I'll have to do the deep dive. And
yes, we got to find, because is that actually like a real thing? Like, has it been proven to be real?
It's hard to say. I mean, it depends who you talk to. Obviously, the authorities say no, it's not real.
The people that have seen it say that it like literally like scarred them for life.
Yeah, I've seen some stills from it, and they look pretty real. But you know how it is. You can produce anything. But
now I believe this came out before the big AI boom.
It's been out forever. It's been out, I think, when her husband was still in office. So
wow. So
or maybe it was after that, because
this would have been like
Uma Aberdeen or whatever.
Yeah.
She was part of Hillary's cabinet when she was the New York senator or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that was after Bill.
I can tell you that I have been around the dark web a little bit, and there is some crazy shit that goes on. That's going to be another episode sometime.
Yeah. I nosed around on like the 4chan sites and stuff, and some of that.
And it gets way, I mean, it gets dark and almost unbelievable.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we'll have to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, but not to get too far off topic here. These are going to be some great future episodes. We got a lot in store, but I do have some things I want to talk about that I kind of saved and that I've seen before, but I wanted to bring up on this episode. Getting back to this whole, do we live in a simulation? Is this a matrix?
Yep.
What is this type thing? So I'm just going to rattle off a couple here. I'm going to start with what was the first? So you may or may not have heard about this before. The coincidences between the Lincoln and John F. Kennedy deaths. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, maybe. It's been a while though.
I'm going to rattle a few things off here. Okay. So again, let's look at this through the scope of, is this even possible if this is not a simulation? Because this is crazy. So both Lincoln and Kennedy were concerned with civil rights. Obviously, they both were a big advocate of it. Lincoln was elected president in 1860. John F. Kennedy was elected in 1960.
Okay.
Both were slain on a Friday and in the presence of their wives. Both were shot from behind and in the head. Their successors, both with the last name of Johnson, were Southern Democrats, and both were in the Senate. Lincoln's successor, Andrew Johnson, was born in 1808, and Lyndon Johnson, JFK's successor, was born in 1908. John Wilkes Booth, Lincoln's killer, was born in 1839, and Lee Harvey Oswald, JFK's killer, was born in 1939. Booth and Oswald were both Southerners favoring unpopular ideas. Both presidents lost children through death while in the White House. Lincoln's secretary, whose name was Kennedy, advised him not to go to the theater. Kennedy's secretary, whose name was Lincoln, advised him not to go to Dallas. I mean, that's crazy.
Right.
John Wilkes Booth shot Lincoln in a theater and ran to a warehouse. Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy from a warehouse and ran to a theater. The names Lincoln and Kennedy each contain 7 letters. The names Andrew Johnson and Lyndon Johnson each contain 13 letters. Their successors. The names John Wilkes Booth and Lee Harvey Oswald each contain 15 letters. Both assassins were killed before being brought to trial. Both Johnsons were opposed to re-election by men whose names start with G. I mean, all of that together is insane.
Yep.
I mean, how's that even possible?
Right. How many coincidences?
Exactly. I mean, even just that alone, that one thing would be like, how can that even be mathematically possible?
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. You just reminded me of something. I have another slightly related curse story for you.
Okay.
So we were staying downstate. I had stayed behind in the hotel that we rented, and Rebecca was out. And she came back. She called to say, hey, I'm going to be there in about 20 minutes to pick you up. Cool. So I go down to the lobby with all our bags, and the lobby has a big plate glass window that faces the parking lot. And in the lobby, there's a fireplace that faces the parking lot, and all the chairs around were facing the fireplace and away from the window. Well, it was like still 15 minutes. I wanted to sit down, and there was one chair all the way on the other side of the room, kind of behind the fireplace because it wasn't facing it. So I'm like, oh, I want to see if I can see the parking lot from that chair. So I drop my bags in front of the window. I walk over, I sit in the chair. Okay, cool. I can see the whole parking lot. So I walk up and picked up my bags. I pick up the bags, and as I turn around from like a hallway you can't even see, out from there comes like a teenage boy, like 13, 14 years old, comes and sits down in that one chair. There's like a sofa and like 6 other chairs in the same room, but he sat in the one chair that I wanted. And then his parents come out from the corner a couple minutes later, and they stand there talking to him. So the whole time I was standing in front of the window, curse you, I wanted that chair.
Wow.
It was just like the coincidence thing that reminded me of that. Like, what are the odds that he could have sat anywhere? And the hotel was empty too. There were like 4 cars in the whole lot. And the one time I wanted that chair, he just pops out of nowhere and just sits in it.
And then I think we talked about it in a past episode when you were out here visiting and you wanted that bag of Fritos. That's still right here.
Dude, you got to get rid of that.
I just kept it for this so I can show it. But I do got to get rid of it. But anyway, I know we already talked about that story where the entire store was empty except for like one employee.
Yes.
And you turned to me and said, I really want a bag of Fritos.
A bag of Fritos.
And we had just talked about this before this.
Yep.
How all this weird stuff happens to you. And then you go to the aisle and that employee was standing directly in front of that bag of Doritos restocking the shelf, so you couldn't get to it.
Going back to the coincidence thing, I don't know.
So I got an anecdote too, a story, and Dad can verify this, our dad. You remember, obviously, Dad used to drive truck for Bell.
Yeah.
So every once in a while, I used to go with him. You know, just every once in a while, I just go. So I played basketball in middle school, and I don't know if you remember my friend Andy Normile.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we played on the team, and we had our team was awful, and we lost like the first 7 games of the season, and we were just getting sick of it. So we had like this horrible offense that our coach had us run. It was terrible. We were never going to win a game. So me and Andy get together one day, and we're like, what can we do, to kind of fix this on our own? So we worked on this. I don't know if you like what a pick and roll is in basketball.
Okay. Yeah.
So we worked on this all day long, and we were like, we're going to use this in our next game. So, Andy would, like, the person guarding me, Andy would come up, set a pick. I'd go around the pick, and then Andy would roll to the basket, and I could either shoot off the pick and roll, or I would pass it to Andy, and as he's rolling to the basket, and he scores, right?
Yeah.
So we have everyone spread out the floor. They go sit out by the 3-point line. We run this pick and roll all game, and we beat this team from Milwaukee. We had no business even competing. We both had like the game of our lives. I had like 20 assists. Andy goes out for like 50 plus points. We just went crazy. So it was the only time ever, and it's because of Dad's work, that he was able to come see one of my games, because I was like, you got to come watch this game. It's going to be awesome. So he was there to witness the game. So we're talking about it in the truck. I go with Dad on his run like a week later. And he's like, so how did you guys come up with this? What did you? And I said, as I'm telling him this, we pulled off. And now we're like 3.5 hours away from home, right, on his route.
Okay.
In the middle of nowhere, Wisconsin. We are in the middle of nowhere in the wilderness. There was this little farmer's stand. They sell, fruit, cheese, and all that kind of stuff. So Dad pulled off so we could grab something to eat for lunch. And we're talking about it, with like how me and Andy kind of came up with this. And as we're getting out of the truck, a car pulls up next to us. And who gets out of the car? The Normile family.
Oh yeah.
Literally, what are the odds of that?
Wow.
I mean,
hours away. Yeah.
It'd have to be 1 in. I don't even know what the number would be.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'll never forget that.
So that just reminds me, there's not much to tell, but we used to live in Port St. Lucie, Florida for a short time. And so it's a total sleeper community. It's just homes. There's no business there to speak of or anything. I'm going to tell the Avril story. So we are at a Walmart in Port St. Lucie, Florida, and we happen to bump into a woman that Rebecca worked with in Japan when she was in Nagoya. And again, just like the Normile thing, like all the things that would have had to take place for us to be in that store, and for her, I think they lived in Canada or something at the time. To be there at that one store in the same checkout as us.
Yeah.
Just, and it sort of ties in with the whole Matrix simulation thing that, if there's code running, okay, here's the part where, Fred and his wife are going to meet this other person, and, and the code played out. And
yeah,
like what from the intro, what Neil Tyson was talking about, like it being like Minecraft or whatever, where perhaps the code doesn't need to run the whole world and everybody's everything. It just needs to run the code that you interact with.
Right. Like it doesn't need to render things until it's sort of like the double slit experiment, right? With quantum physics. Like things don't render until you give it attention.
You need to observe it. Right.
So it all sort of like starts to kind of tie together. And it's pretty cool.
Huh. There's an author that I really, really like, probably my favorite author of all time, named Tad Williams. I might have talked about him with you. He's
the Dragonbone Chair.
Right, Dragonbone Chair. Yeah, that was like life-changing, that series for me. But he has a series of books that I read when I was probably in my early 30s called Otherland. Mm-hmm. And It's a 4-book series, and it's funny because, and there's other books he has like this too. I'll just explain it. So the series starts off in a college in Northern Africa or Southern Africa. It was in Africa, on a university. And basically what the whole series is about is there's a group of like, billionaire elites, and they build this whole like secret computer program, this whole network that is so uber realistic that when you are in there in a VR sense, it's literally like you're alive, like you're there. And there's these tanks that you like immerse your body into, and in like this jelly stuff. And when you go into their VR world, basically you're living it. You have the same sensations and, eating and everything else that you would have in real life. It's a total simulation that is exactly like real life. So in this book series, it takes place in the future, but the very, very near future. And the whole book deals with the internet, and it being the whole internet being like a VR world. So for you to interact with the web, the lowest people would have like a VR set that you put on, but you can get links installed into the back of your neck so you can link directly to your computer so that you see and hear everything that you would have done with the VR set on. And then really expensive tanks that the military would use and stuff are the tanks I just talked about, where you immerse yourself in there so you can touch things and feel the sensation of touching it, or hot and cold and flavors and everything else. Wow. So there's that. And then there's this whole secret internet that all these elites are using. And the purpose of the whole series is that these elites are building worlds of their own design that basically they would rule over like gods, and that they want to basically download their consciousness into this computer program so that they can live forever.
And so, how far off from reality is that right now?
Well, it's when you read the books, there's so much in there that it's kind of weird now looking back on it in hindsight, because I read the books 20 years ago or more. The books mimic real life so much, not even as just the internet stuff, but they talk about professional sports. And in that series, basically college football is like the main sport that the whole world watches now. The NFL doesn't even exist. Like, it collapsed years ago. And all these college players are getting paid the same that pro players do now and everything. And It's just funny. The society is moving towards this book the way it was all written. And so that whole book deals a lot with that, with everything being a simulation. And it talks about that when they get in there, and later in the books, the main characters get in an argument with the main villain guy who's setting up this network. He's like, don't you get it? Like, what's the difference? Like, if you're in that world or this world, tell me what the difference is. There's nothing. That the simulation is so real that it is real, that there's no difference between the simulation and the not simulation.
Have you tried VR yet? Like with the full goggles and everything?
Yeah, we used to have the whole Oculus thing. Yeah. It was pretty basic, but I mean, amazing.
Yeah.
I remember the first time I tried it on, I was playing a set that Quinn, my son, had gotten, and I was playing some shooter game, and I was hiding behind a desk. So I was leaning down, and they're shooting at me, and I have my gun, and I stood up over the top of the desk to fire. So I stood up and I put my hand on the desk so I could, but the desk isn't real.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I stood up and I put my hand on the desk and I went face first right under the ground.
Oh.
But yes, so it's very realistic for sure. So so Ted Williams has that book. If you, it's a series called Otherland, and it's incredible. And the whole thing, the main characters, they're basically it gets to a point, without giving it away or getting too far lost in the weeds, where the internet, sort of the wall between reality and the web, gets shut down, so that everybody who's in the VR world is stuck there. And they're discovering, because when people are dying online, they're actually dying in real life, and their like soul gets trapped in there, and it's this really neat thing. But
Yeah.
It's amazing how much that book is totally lining up with reality in kind of a weird way, because it's really, really accurate. So
Like a
read that.
Orwellian type thing.
He also has another book. It's a standalone book called, I think it's called War of the Roses, and it deals. There's this guy. It's sort of I don't want to call it a fantasy book, but all these old like fairy tales and things turned out to be real. That the worlds got separated for whatever reason. Blah blah blah. But my point of the story is, there's a scene in it, and in modern reproductions of the book, reprints, there's actually a warning label on the inside, because it's so realistic that people are getting triggered. There's a scene in there where there's these families that are, really rich and powerful, and there's a lot of politics fighting behind the scenes. And this one family who works for a different government decides to, take out this other family or whatever, and they have these dragons who they're not supposed to live anymore. They were like destroyed. The dragons were all killed like a millennia ago, but this family's been secretly raising these dragons. Anyways, in the scene, one of the last scenes in the book, they have this dragon flying over a city and using its breath, its fire, take out a pair of office buildings that contain all this information and all these people that are important in the book. And the scene totally gets into, the dragon comes in, it hits these office buildings with its flames, and the buildings come down, and there's this whole like several chapters where they're describing what it's like to be in these towering skyscrapers, a pair of twin towers, if you will, as they come crashing down. And it talks about all the, remember when the buildings came down, all that white or like gray powder that came out because of all the asbestos and everything. All that was talked about in those books. It talked about being trapped, and all the people that were stuck in there trying to get out while they were burning before the buildings collapsed. And all this was written 20 plus years before 9/11.
That was my next question. Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
And so in the modern reprints of that, I think he actually went in and took out some of those scenes because it was so realistic. So whatever, when there's warning labels, if you're upset about this, don't read it, whatever. But I don't know. The Tad Williams thing is weird. A lot of his books now are lining up with reality.
Wow.
I'm going to have to start reading those books again now.
Yeah. Yep. So there's a couple more things I was gonna.
That's what I was gonna say.
So there's just a couple other things that are kind of odd. Like for example, a total eclipse occurs when the disk of the moon appears to fit perfectly over the disk of the sun. But how is this possible when the moon is 400 times smaller than the sun? The answer is that the sun is 400 times farther from the Earth. Astronomers say there is no scientific explanation for why the geometry should line up this way. They're like two machine cut quarters that line up perfectly.
Right. Well, there's no denying that.
Just another weird, like, how is that even possible type thing in our realm, Here's a couple other things. So, the cartoon Dennis the Menace, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on March 12th, 1961, a character named Dennis the Menace debuted in the British comic The Beano. A few hours later, on the other side of the Atlantic, a new syndicated newspaper comic strip was published, also called Dennis the Menace. The two comic creators did not know each other and had no idea of the other's work. That's wild.
That is.
Let's a couple more here. Here's a couple sports ones. There have only been 2 players in Major League Baseball history with the last name Moyer. Ed Moyer and Jamie Moyer. Jamie Moyer pitched for the Seattle Mariners. So there have only been 2 players in baseball history with the last name Moyer. Ed Moyer and Jamie Moyer.
Okay.
Ed Moyer died on November 18th, 1962. Jamie Moyer was born on November 18th, 1962. They are not related to each other. That's crazy. Here's a few more sports ones. So the St. Louis Blues hockey team in the years 2013 and 2014 made the playoffs both years. And their playoff runs were almost exactly identical. So in 2013, the St. Louis Blues lost the series in 6 games. In the year 2014, the next year, they also lost in 6 games in their playoff series. In game 1 in 2013, Alex Steen scored the game-winning goal. In game 1 of the next year, 2014, Alex Steen scored the game-winning goal. Game 2, 2013, Barrett Jackman scored the game-winning goal. Game 2 of the next year, 2014, Barrett Jackman scored the game-winning goal. Game 3, 2013, the Blues opponents outshot them by 9. And in the next year, in game 3, the Blues opponent outshot them by 9. In game 4 of 2013, the Blues had a 3-2 lead going into the very last few minutes of the game, and they blew it and lost. In game 4 of the next year, they had a 3-2 lead going into the final couple minutes and blew that and lost. Game 5 of 2013, their opponent led 1-0 and then 2-1 and then won the game in overtime. Game 5 the next year, their opponent led 1-0, 2-1, and then won the game in overtime. Game 6, the Blues were outscored by 1 goal in 2013, and that ended their series. The next year, game 6, they were outscored by 1 goal and lost and was out of the playoffs. So their playoff runs back-to-back years were literally identical.
Wow.
Which is wild.
Right.
Also, hockey. I don't remember what year this was, but there was 2 twin brothers, identical twin brothers, the Sedin brothers, Daniel Sedin and Heinrich Sedin. Daniel Sedin wore number 22. Heinrich Sedin wore number 33. So on the final game of the year, now, so if you take 22 or 33 or 23, which is 1 number from each, the final game of the year that they played together, Daniel Sedin scored his 23rd goal in overtime, assisted by his brother Heinrich Sedin, which was his 23rd overtime assist in his career. Their goalie got his 23rd win that day, which happened to be his 23rd birthday. Daniel Sedin that game scored 2 minutes and 33 seconds into overtime, assisted by his brother Heinrich Sedin, which made the total time for the entire game. I'm sorry. 2 hours, 22 minutes, and 33 seconds exactly. The Blues had 22% power play percentage. The Coyotes had a 33% power play percentage. This is all the same game, their last game together. There were 55 total faceoffs in the game. Vancouver won 33 of them. Phoenix won 22 of them. That's wild.
Yeah.
The odds of all that in the same game. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the last one, is this the last one? There's 2 more. The last one's crazy, but this one's the second to last one. So there was a guy named Pat Quinn. He was a player and then later a coach and then also a general manager. When he played, he wore number 23 for the Toronto Maple Leafs. So they, after he had passed away the next year, now remember, he wore number 23. On the 23rd game of the Maple Leaf season, they had Pat Quinn night, which was to honor him. So in the first period, with 23 seconds left, Toronto scored to make it 2-0 Leafs. 23 seconds into the second period, they scored again to make it 3-0. Right after that, the Capitals scored, And then 23 seconds after that, the Leafs scored again to make it 4-1. The Leafs ended with 23 shots on goal in the game. And Pat Quinn was only able to wear number 23 for the Leafs because the player he replaced, Eddie Sock, wore number 23, and he was traded, which allowed him to use the number 23. Eddie Sock and him passed away on the same day, November 23rd, 2014.
Yeah.
That is wild.
Yeah. A lot of coincidences for sure.
Here is this is like this to me, this seals it. So there was Joe Theismann. He was a quarterback in the 80s for the Washington Redskins at the time.
Right.
So then later there's a quarterback, Alex Smith, who also played for the Washington Redskins. So Joe Theismann's career was ended. He got sacked by Lawrence Taylor, and he broke his leg. It was a disgusting. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Disgusting injury.
I remember it.
Whole leg snapped. So Joe Theismann's career ended with a broken right tibia and fibula. Alex Smith also, I think he made a very brief comeback, but his career was over. He was having a good season, and he also got sacked, broke his right tibia and fibula. Now here's where it starts getting crazy. They were both quarterback for the Washington Redskins. They both ended their careers with a broken right tibia and fibula. The date this occurred for Joe Theismann, November 18th, 1985. The date that happened for Alex Smith, November 18th, 2018. They both played for the Washington Redskins. They both had, when this happened, they were both playing at home in Washington, D.C. Joe Theismann was sacked and broke his leg on the 39-yard line. Alex Smith was sacked and broke his leg on the 39-yard line. The final score of the game, Joe Theismann broke his leg in, 23-21. The final score of the game that Alex Smith broke his leg in, 23-21. Joe Theismann was sacked and broke his leg by three-time Defensive Player of the Year, Lawrence Taylor. Alex Smith was sacked and broke his leg by three-time Defensive Player of the Year, J.J. Watt.
Oh, yeah.
The left tackle, who's the main person that protects the quarterback from the other team's best rusher, Joe Theismann, his Pro Bowl left tackle, Joe Jacoby, was off the field due to injury. Alex Smith, his Pro Bowl left tackle, Trent Williams, was off the field due to injury.
Wow.
And then the final kicker, the game that Alex Smith was sacked and broke his leg, Joe Theismann was in attendance of the game.
Yeah. Wow.
I mean, what the hell?
Right. So what's your thoughts on that then? That we're seeing coincidences like this because they're the same codes being used, or
it's something like, it's almost like a repeated script. I mean, how can it be that exact? You know, it's almost like a grouping a code that like a program that got reran or something, you know?
Sure. So how would a simulation world be possible? Like what would have to be done to even make this work? Is there some, alien out there who's, kid is running The Sims on his computer and we're just inside that program? Or is it something bigger than that? Or
that's one of the possibilities. I know that's one of the kind of the theories that we're in some sort of like a experiment, like a kid's school experiment, right?
Yeah.
Or, is it like some, I don't know, far superior intelligent beings that are running some sort of same thing, like a program, and kind of like the Matrix, maybe what we think are like aliens or spirits or something is just them. They know about what this all is, but we don't, because we're just dumb, bots in a computer simulation.
Right.
Maybe. I mean,
NPCs.
We talked about like probability tunnels, right? And we sort of get freaked out when we get outside our probability tunnels.
Right.
Every single day I wake up at the same time. I, shower at the same time. I put on my work clothes. I go to the same gas station. I get my morning drink and I take the same route to work every day. and it just loops over and over. And the minute we get anywhere outside of that, it's like, whoa, what's going on? You know?
Right.
So
if you think about how much like computer power it would take, I mean, yes, we'd only have to render a little bit really to make it work, but think about how much power it would take to render stuff in the detail that we see it and experience. That's insane.
yeah. I mean, it really would. So there's no telling how powerful that computer system could be. I mean, look how far we've gone from just in our lives playing Atari with little square tanks going boop, or Pong, you know, boop, boop. And now we're playing, you know, NBA 2K25 with perfectly rendered, you know, players and perfect lighting and,
Right.
you know.
So if you have someone who's like, I'm going to create this world,
Mhm.
and they're going on their computer or whatever device they're using, and they come up with this, and they're pulling strings, and they make all this happen, and they're somewhere outside of watching, observing, maybe manipulating all of this. How is that any different? How does that not totally prove the existence of God?
Well, I think they could be. I think God could exist in both. Like, how do we define God? You know, could God just be the creator of this? He could just be a teenage kid in some classroom in another dimension.
From our point of view, he's the all-powerful, almighty.
Right. And
Took
really,
about a week or so to build the world.
yeah, and really, it's just some teenager that smoked a bunch of weed, and he's like, "Oh, I got to do this science fair project," and you know, and he just threw this together, and you know, I don't know, forgot about it, and here we are.
Yeah. In those Ted Williams books I told you about, Otherland, the main characters sort of jump between all of these different simulated worlds. And in one of them, I remember, it's all sort of the world that they're in, the realm that they're in, is all based on Lord of the Rings. And the creator of that particular world was like, oops, I accidentally left the evolution setting too high. So like when they finally enter this world, like the elves are like in like these super fast stealthy jet fighters, and they're dropping like nukes and stuff on the dwarves and whatever.
Wow.
Because he left the evolution setting too high. So
Oh,
like
so it sort of
instead of
overlapping.
being like in a fantasy world like that has evolved all the way up to like modern technology, and there's still the same battles and wars going on, but now
Right.
technology has totally evolved to the point of whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And then, you know, the thing too is like, let's say this is some sort of a computer program or a simulation. Even using our own religion that we've come up with, whatever this stuff is, like, how do we know that like saying a prayer a certain way and then ending it with the word amen isn't like in the code? Like when you do it that way,
Right. Colon backslash.
right, exactly. And then that, you know, opens up something that allows that to happen. You know, I mean, it could be a million. That doesn't mean like, I mean, I think a simulation and God or religion could kind of exist together, you know? So just a thought.
Yeah. And then there could be just endless layers of that. So
Yeah.
there's us, and if it's a simulation, there's that guy and, you know, his world. And what if, who created that? And then who created that? And then who created that?
Exactly. And have you ever had the thought when you're just out in public, like some, like these people have to be like NPCs?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I've thought that thousands of times, or like sort of like the Truman Show, like in the introduction, like sometimes things to me seem to like almost like run in a loop, you know?
When I was young, you know, our family, dad used to drive us up north all the time, and we'd drive, you know, through all these little towns all the way up and down. And I remember my theory when I was a little kid, and I mean little, like, you know, 6, 7, 8, all these towns look the same to me. Everybody we met looked the same, talked the same. And I actually had this thought, this idea that we never really left home, that all of the places we drive to was this dad like driving in circles, that it was all just the same thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny now that we talk about it in this sense, that doesn't really seem all that different, that it's all just a play, just things on a loop, just showing us the same things all the time.
Right.
And it appears to be bigger than it is when really there's barely anything.
Right. So maybe things aren't, rendered as much as we think because, the server's sort of just a loop of itself, and then, things just render as we need them to, but it's really just, it's sort of like when you play like big multiplayer games, like the developers, every single tree is not like, different. They'll just take this and just drop it here, and,
yeah.
And maybe it's just the same type of thing. Here's another question in all this that I've thought about too. So take something like, do you remember the game, like it was big in the early 2000s, EverQuest? The massive.
Oh, yeah.
So there was this really popular spot. So in the elf town, I think it was called Kellethan, right? So it was like a wood elf town. Just outside of there was like this orc city that everybody would go to.
Yep.
And before
this
you
all
go
happened after the World of Warcraft thing.
I think this was right before World of Warcraft.
Was it before they flipped around? Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, people would gather on this hill just outside of that orc city to get everything, the groups together, get everything prepared. And we started calling it, just became known as Orc Hill. That's what everybody called it.
Okay.
So my question is Orc Hill inside of EverQuest, and this is just an example, any game or any whatever, is that place just as real as that 7-Eleven across the street from you right now? Even though it's in like a digital world, is that place just as real? Does it exist just like that 7-Eleven across the street does?
Yeah.
I think so. I think it's a place in space and time somewhere,
Sure.
And then it gets even crazier. So let's say there's 30 servers going on at the same time. There's 30 parallel dimensions, with all, Orc Hill is still there, but like things happen a little bit differently in each one. And, that bleeds into like our reality. Like we talked about,
you're getting
like
back to quantum physics and string theory now.
Right. So, I think we live in some sort of a simulation. I almost think we have to.
Yeah. I don't know. It's still kind of a big subject for me to wrap my brain around. I'm not quite as willing to accept it, but not because I'm just rejecting out of hand, but because I can't even comprehend what it is I'm rejecting or not rejecting.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Very interesting. Something to think about for sure. And like you said, if you accept that, okay, this is a simulation now, do you live your life any differently? Then does life then, if you're just code and you don't realize it, does life have any meaning? Like, why don't I just go out and kill a bunch of people and rob and steal and rape and pillage? Because what's the difference? It's just a game.
I guess your reputation in the game goes down like it does in video games. But
that's what I was saying. Like, what difference does it make? I still have a conscience,
right,
that dictates my actions.
Now, and then the question is conscious the reason for that, or is like social pressure the reason, like social boundaries that we create, like, oh, you're not supposed to do that, or I don't know. Like, what I'm saying is that a construct of our mind or of our society?
Right.
I don't know. I'll say this. I know a couple things. Like if I hold the door open for somebody and they're like, oh, thank you, like it makes me feel good, right? I also know that if I turn around and like hit somebody, I feel bad about it, like intrinsically, right? So what is that?
Right.
So I don't know. I mean, there is some sort of like force. I don't know what that is. I don't even know how to explain it. That isn't just computer code.
Yeah, I agree.
You know,
Well, is that your soul? Is that your
right?
guiding force?
I don't know. It's like the shit just gets weird. Like the more you think about it, the weirder it gets. You know.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's a large concept, and it's like trying to pick up water with your bare hands. It's so slippery. It's hard to even define the parameters that you're trying to describe. You know.
It is. It's like sand through your fingers, right? I don't know. Then, if it's not a simulation and this is base reality, then still what's the point of all of it?
Yeah, it all comes back to that same question. What's the point?
Is it binary at the end? Like, well, you had a pretty good life, you cured cancer, you saved 3 people from drowning. However, you ate meat during Lent.
What? You're burning, yeah.
And, well, I was on a flight though, and they served us pork. He's like, yeah, but like you flew through a different time zone right at midnight, which made it an hour before, which still made it Friday. So when you ate the pork at 12:01, I'm sorry, but that's going to be all for you. And then he hits the lever and down you go.
That's a whole other episode.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Jay. Well, I guess I don't know. I feel like this episode like took something out of me. I'm kind of depressed now a little bit. Like I don't know what to think right now.
Sorry.
Yeah. It's a lot to think about. All right. Well,
watch some Bob Ross. It's like a he's like a walking antidepressant.
That's true. That's true. I love Bob Ross.
I actually have Pluto TV, which has the Bob Ross channel. I watch it all the time.
Me too. Me too. Yep. I have a little miniature Bob Ross figurine.
Oh, no way.
Yep.
Nice.
It was a gift from a friend. I keep it on my desk.
There's a theory that he's a serial killer. Have you ever heard that?
No, I have not heard that one.
So there was like, I forget how it all goes. There was like all these murders, and they found that like when they found these people's bodies, the scenes he painted were like exact locations of where they found these people's bodies.
Oh, really?
There's this theory that he was painting like where he stored the bodies, and then he was like making paintings out of.
Oh, fantastic. I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, take a look at that. It's like the Bob Ross serial killer theory. It's pretty interesting.
I'll have to look it up for sure. It reminds me, I don't think it was an actual story, but there was something I read, a author online was talking about, I want to write a book where there's a serial killer who's like an online chef, like one of these influencers who has their own channels and stuff. And they do all these killings and totally admit to everything in the recipe that they share online, but no one ever knows about it because everybody skips past, hits the button that says jump to recipe. So even though they admit to everything, like no one ever finds out about it because no one ever reads all the text before the recipe.
Yeah.
But Bob Ross, yeah, that'd be interesting.
Maybe that's a future episode.
Maybe. Too bad we can't get him on the show though.
Yeah.
His son's still around painting. He's pretty old too now though.
Oh, that's right. Didn't he start taking over the show at the end?
Yeah. There was a lot of controversy there because his son never really had any rights to any of his dad's stuff. So when Bob's estate got sold to whatever company that now handles it, his son Robbie's not getting any of the profits from that or whatever. and everyone's like, "Oh no, that's like so unfair," or whatever. And yeah, yes and no. But yeah, anyways, there's a lot of debates in the Bob Ross world about whether his son should have the rights to his dad's work or not.
Nice.
But the truth is, his dad didn't set it up to give his son all the work. So what are you gonna do? You know?
Right.
Who knows? Yeah. We should do a Bob Ross episode sometime. I don't know what that would entail, but
I don't know either. But he was a great man.
Yes.
Unless he was a serial killer. I guess we don't know.
Right. Which would make a great episode.
Yeah.
I'll do some research. If there's anything to that, I'll put together some evidence and we'll talk about it.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up then.
Okay.
Simulation theory. Do we live in a simulation? Please give us your thoughts and comments. Hit us up on Facebook and X and YouTube and Spotify. Give us your likes, your comments. We want to hear from you. Tell us we're crazy. Tell us we're awesome. And
unless we're crazy awesome.
That's right. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 10.
Keep wandering.
Until next time, keep wandering. Take care, everybody.
Later.